Hey everybody, welcome to Active Self-Protection Extra. Today, I want to talk to you about something that is not settled like, industry kind of standard, but why I think on a home defense carbine, why I personally maintain slings on all my carbines, and why I recommend your long gun, even for home defense, has a sling. MagTech has maintained their high quality during the ammo panic and ramped production to the max. Their ammo is the only ammo I run on the range because of its performance and reliability. I recommend MagTech wholeheartedly. Again, let me say, this is not like a consensus opinion of the high-end professional instructors. I've seen people on both sides with respect specifically to a home defense gun. I'm not talking about a patrol carbine for cops here. Everyone I know, a patrol carbine needs to have a sling attached to it, full stop, because of the mission. Now, when we're talking about a home defense mission, I've had friends, like legit friends, like Chris Seipert from Citizens Defense Research. I've also had friends like Cecil Birch from Immediate Action Combatives say that they do not believe that their carbine, that their home defense long gun needs a sling. Okay, I get it. Now, in Chris's case in particular, was the most recent one that I saw. Chris says, I just can't imagine a scenario where I would need a sling for a home defense rifle, and so I don't have one on there. Okay, I think that's great. However, we have some instances on the channel of seeing the results of not having a home defense gun with a sling on it. In particular, I want to talk about a recent video on the channel of a shooting of a man who had what ended up being police officers on a stakeout, sitting out in front of his car with the lights on and the engine running. He thought that was sketchy, went outside, turned his porcelain on and off several times, then went out with his long gun in hand and ended up pointing it at those officers, and they shot him for that. Next one that we have, and we've seen it, this one's gotten like humongously famous, nationwide famous, was the case of Mark McCloskey. And you see Mark McCloskey, they've got all kinds of protesters out in front of their house. He has a sling on his AR-15 rifle, and yet he's kind of waving that rifle around rather than using the sling. And in both of those cases, I think a sling could have made a significant difference. Remember, McCloskey then Mark McCloskey pled guilty to criminal charges from that incident. And I think he could have prevented those criminal charges. And I also think that the other man might have prevented getting shot by the cops if he had simply slung their rifle. So again, your rifle, generally home defense, you're thinking about a home invasion scenario, you're thinking about hunkering down in your environment or whatever. We're not talking about private citizen, one-man CQB or whatever. Generally, it's a very powerful, useful tool as a hunker down tool. I love that. But in both these cases, and we see that with not regularity, but some instances of people going, there's something going on my property or in my curtilage where I want to take some firepower and I want to take more than my handgun with me, and so they grab their rifle. Well, if I have my rifle up and on me and I sling it, right? This now is, the sling is to a rifle as a holster is to a sidearm. That if in the case of the private citizen who came out, got shot by the cops, if he had simply had his rifle slung, and again, come back there and go, hey man, are you guys okay? What's going on? Now, he might have got a gun pointed at him by the cops, but this is, again, like a holstered gun, especially on his property, would have been okay. But because he came out with the gun in hand, he didn't have any other choice, couldn't stick it down his pants or whatever. Now, he made a fatal mistake and pointed it at him, and I think that was a huge mistake. But my point is that if he had simply come out with the gun slung and been like, hey, I need you guys to move on, please, this is less threatening. It's definitely an overt statement. It's openly carrying a firearm, but it's a less threatening statement. It's not immediately in my hands and deliverable. Same thing with Mark McCloskey. If he comes out on his property and he's got his AR slung, right? Loaded up, all that stuff, but slung. And he goes, hey, I need you guys to take off. Don't come on my property. I need you guys out of here. This says I'm not to be messed with. But again, it is not the threatening pointing, because just like a holstered firearm is not pointed, a slung firearm is not pointed. So I'm not pointing a gun at anybody. I can't be pointing a gun at anybody. I don't have a gun in my hands. I have a firearm slung. I also think, there could be stuff there where I might need to use both hands in that instance, to move my spouse around or whatever, get some things on my property. Those are all other things as well. But I think from an optics perspective, I live in Arizona. It's an open carry state. We very seldom see somebody openly carrying a long gun like this, though you could, but there's a huge difference between walking around with a gun in your hand. If someone's walking around, at a low ready position, that's a problem. That's somebody that's like they're walking around with a pistol in their hand. But somebody who has a long gun slung is like somebody who's openly carrying a handgun in a holster. It changes the optics of the situation, and that's why, because of those kinds of situations, I maintain this. Now, I know some folks are going to say, but wait a minute, John, it's slower if I have the gun slung than if I have the gun at a ready position, whether that's a guard position like this or a low ready position where I'm looking over it. Of course it is. You're right, 100%. That's just like a gun carried in a holster is slower than a gun at guard or a gun at low ready. Of course it is. But again, it's on my person without the overt threat. So I'm not going to be at your gunfight, okay? I'm not going to be where you are in that moment. You're going to have to decide that. But I think the two cases that we saw on the channel really point to why I want a sling on my rifle and why all my home defense long guns have slings on them. Hope it helps you.